Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Technique Tuesday. My name is Ali Board. I am a professional artist, art tutor and demonstrator. And if you are watching on Facebook at 9 a.m. on Tuesday, the 25th of October, then you are watching me live. It's very lovely to be here with all of you. Now, we have a project to continue. I started it last week. If you're not sure about where you can go to catch the first part of the project, that's very easy to rectify. You go over to www.learningtopaint.co.uk and you find the Technique Tuesday blog. Let's show you where you go to find that. So you pop over to the website, so you put that www.learningtopaint.co.uk or search learningtopaint.co.uk, and here is my website. You go over to the resources part. Yours might look a little bit different from this, but you will find resources in the menu somewhere, and there you have Technique Tuesday. And this is the blog that I do on a lot of Tuesdays during the year. You can see that part 2 has already gone live, although bizarrely we're in a time warp because I'm recording it as we speak. And there you can see last week's broadcast that I did. So very easy to find, very easy to catch up with what we've been doing. And if you are a little bit stuck for a project or you want a little bit of inspiration, then don't forget you can pop back over to those blog posts and you can find yourself a new project. Now you might be watching this on catch up either on social media or on YouTube, but I do like to say hello to those lovely people that have taken the time and trouble to tune in live. There's a lot of you this morning. Don't forget to let me know where you are watching from, because it's nice to give you a shout out. Now, the award for today for first comment in the live stream goes to the lovely Julie. Good morning. And she's saying hello everybody. Who else have we got in the room? Hilary P, Anne, Rabina, Joe T, Anita is in the room too, Pam, Alice, we are all over the world today, Patricia, Christine, Fran. Now Fran is saying, I hope your chickens are okay. Thank you, Fran, for asking. Yes, I've been a little bit public recently about bird flu, which is here in the UK, and having to lock the chickens down. At the moment, thank you for asking, they're absolutely fine. They're not happy with me, but they're fine. I can take that. Barbara, just down the road from me. Good morning. Good morning to lovely Rachel. And who else have we got? Kat and B. I have to say the letters of your surname because sometimes I don't want you to think I'm talking about somebody else. Trisha, Joe is saying, I've made it. Good morning, lovely. Leslie, Jane, Thea, Ali D, Simone and Viv as well. Good morning to each and every one of you. It's great to have you here. So should we have a catch up on what we've been doing? And I will show you as well where I've kind of pushed it to. I did a little bit of work, a little bit of kind of investigation, and we'll see what it is that we're going to do this week. So here is the tracing that I took. Good morning, Maureen. Last week. Let's flip that over. So this was a really easy method of getting nice leaf shapes down onto a piece of paper, because what I did was I slid the leaves underneath my tracing paper. I took a black fine liner and then I drew back around the contour. Good morning, Sandy. Good morning, Maureen. And this was my piece of tracing paper. I then had a little bit of a play on my technology. And by that, I meant I've got a printer, scanner, copier. So I popped this on the scanner bed of my printer, and I had a bit of a sort of play around with it, making it same size, making it smaller. Morning, Rosemary. And looking at ways I could do it. Now, I had every intention, this just goes to prove, doesn't it, that you should test these things out. You can't do it all theoretically. So I took the scan and now I have that digitally. I have that saved on my computer. Morning, Cheryl. Then I sort of messed around with the scale of it, because I thought, oh, what I'll do is I'll make it smaller and I'll print it out onto watercolour paper. Then I'll make it, don't worry, I'll come to that bit. I'll make it smaller, and then it won't take me so long to paint, and we can get through this project. However, when I saw this, I was a little bit disappointed, because I thought, well, that doesn't really give me a huge amount of scope to get the kind of colour changes, to play about with texture on such a small scale. So that was my first decision. I thought, you know what, I'm not going to make it smaller, I'm going to make it the same size. And so what I then did, ignore this fuzzy bit, I'll get to the fuzzy bit in a minute. Then what I did was I printed from my digital file out onto watercolour paper. Now, if you have a back feed printer, let me just explain what a back feed printer is. That is a printer that has a slot at the back where you can load it with media, so paper, photographic paper or otherwise, and it takes it through under the rollers and comes out of the front. If your printer can do that, there is a chance that you will be able to do this, to print out onto watercolour paper. If you have a tray feed printer only, so that's where you have to load the paper into the tray and it has to come up round the tray and out round the rollers and out, then the chances are it's not going to pick up watercolour paper, because this is really pushing my luck on the weight. This is £140, 300 gram, and I did get it to work. I did get it to print out, and then a little bit of me, a little bit of kind of spidey senses in the back of my head was saying to myself, hang on a minute, there's a difference between a laser copier and an inkjet printer. Okay, so a laser printer is powdered ink, and the way that is fixed to the paper is by heat. So if you have a laser printer, then you would be able to put your watercolour over the top. And I was doing this through my inkjet printer, which is not fixed by heat. It's literally a pigment-rich ink that prints it out. And I thought, hang on a minute. I am fairly sure that if I wet this bit of paper, and let me just show you, because I did that little test there, look, then it's going to bleed ever so slightly. Now it doesn't, right, you can see the water's gone a little bit grey, which I don't actually dislike as a sort of tonal study. Let's do a little bit more of that while we're here. I didn't really want that to happen to mine. It makes the edge a little bit too fuzzy. It's not as crisp and as clean as I would like it to be. Good morning, Anne. And so I thought maybe this is not the way to go. And the other thing that was worrying me about this is I want to be able to use very kind of clean, very translucent, very rich colour on this, and I didn't want there to be this really whopping great black outline. I was concerned about that. Now, if I was going to be painting these leaves in lots of dark colours, then I doubt I'd have worried about it too much. But that was my experiment since I saw you last. Now, Hilary P is saying Bockingford inkjet watercolour paper, 190 grams, St Cuthbert Mill, works well. Yes, you're absolutely right. There are papers that you can get that are meant to go through printers, but my issue with them all is how much the ink will run. Now, this watercolour paper, just to catch it, I just need to say some good morning. Excuse me a second. Good morning, Hazel in Tuscany. Good morning, Sally. Good morning, Lynn. Good morning, Marion. Lots of you in the room. Good morning, Jo. She popped up there as well. Lots of you in the room this morning. This is obviously something that interests you greatly. This watercolour paper, yes, you can use Bockingford, yes, you can use Saunders Waterford. This is actually Milford watercolour paper. This is a watercolour paper that is part of my repertoire of papers that I use. It's a bit different from other papers, and if you want the link to where to find it, then pop over to the blog. You'll see the link there. It's already gone live, so you can go over to the blog right now to get that link. Good morning, Judith. And why have I chosen Milford? I can hear you all saying yes about Ali. I've got Saunders Waterford and I've got this and I got that. That's absolutely fine. I'm using Milford today because I think I know where this project is going to go. I'm not positive, but I think I have a sort of an idea of where I want this project to go. And if I'm correct, then I want to be able to re-scan this image when I have finished colouring it in. And one of the reasons that Milford scans really well, oh, excuse me, I do have a drink of water with me this morning just in case I had a coughing fit, excuse me. I've just dribbled that everywhere, well done Ali. The reason that I'm using Milford is because Milford scans really beautifully. So I'll get a little bit of texture in my background, but it's a nice bright colour as well. It's not too yellow. So lots of considerations have gone into, good morning Sheena, have gone into this. I haven't just sort of gone, oh, this is a thing and this is why I'm going to use it. And I know that's why you tune into Technique Tuesday. You do it for the giggles, I get that, and you do it to be part of this lovely community that we've built up, but it's also to understand the processes that I go through and why I do the things that I do. So it's not some sort of random selection. It sometimes is, but today it's not. This is where I got to with it. That I am now going to use to test my colours out on. So it's not kind of wasted or lost. This is something that I can use in a second when I show you how I'm going to prepare my actual version. Now, because I had that digital version, because I had scanned it in, and now I've got a lovely line drawing that I can use several times over, and I can use it for future workshops and all the rest of it, I've kind of reverted back to the way that I would normally get my line drawing onto watercolour paper, which is to use a transfer technique. So I've printed it out just onto normal 80 GSM copier. I've popped my trace down underneath, and there you can see I've already started it. So I'm going to go back over now. I've just got one more leaf to do. I know that most of you know how to do a transfer technique, but you know me, I like you to see it as I have actually done it, so that you don't think that I've kind of done anything that you don't know about. I know you wouldn't think that I cheat, and if I do cheat, I'm always the first person to admit, or as we like to say, not cheating, shortcutting it. But I thought I'd just do this last leaf. Now, Patricia's made a really good point. She said, you've made me think that I should be giving my work more thought before I start. Sometimes, Patricia, I do absolutely work on instinct. I don't overthink it too much. I think it's because having you lovely lot out there in kind of art land, the land beyond my computer, shall we call it, I think I try to think about it a little bit more so that you can understand why I'm doing the things that I'm doing. If I was working on my own, I possibly would work a little more intuitively and just wait to see what happens. So I think sometimes you're right. I think there's a reason to be thinking out your project. And sometimes I think you can overthink it way too much and you should just go for it and be artistic and creative about it. I think because I have you lovely lot to answer to, I think that's why I do it. Julie is agreeing with you as well. So there I've got my transfer. Have I got all the information that I need for my transfer? I think I have. Let's just tag my watercolour paper down onto the surface. These are magnets, incidentally. This is a new system. Go back and watch one of the previous, I can't remember which Technique Tuesday. I think it was the lilac breasted roller that I started doing this. So I have a metal sheet on my drawing board. I've also got my non-slip cover, and then I use these really strong magnets, of course they're purple, to hold my piece of paper down so that it's much easier to stop it slipping because it is on a slight angle. All of those things. So much information this morning. Right, let's carefully peel this away because this has been down for a few days, and I don't want to ruin the surface of my Milford, so I'm being very careful about how I peel this away. And then I'll fold these bits over and I will file this with all the other stuff that I've got so far. I know some of you out there, I've talked about this in my classes before, have a system of getting one of those pocket folders, you know, those kind of ones with the plastic pockets already in. And it's great because you can put your painting in there, you can put your photograph in there, any notes that you've made, any line drawings that you've got. And it's a nice system because sometimes I've looked back through old folders and gone, oh, I fancy having another go at that. So having all of the information kept together there works really well. So now we have the pencil, the trace down transfer version of my leaves. Now, I'm going to do something that cameras aren't going to particularly like, and I'm going to make this line drawing a lot paler. Why am I doing that? I'm doing it because I really want the colour to sing, and we'll talk about colour today. So I don't want the line to dominate it. I want it to be there as a guide, but I don't want it to be strong. So I'm taking a putty eraser. I treated myself to a relatively new one for this demonstration. And so I'm going to go over and just lightly dust, or maybe not that heavy, Ali. I wanted a line. I didn't want it to disappear completely. See, that was me. I wasn't concentrating. Just kind of lightly, there we go, that's better. Dust my putty eraser over the top of my line drawing so that I can see it. Can you still see it in the camera? Yes, you can just about see it in the camera. But it's not going to dominate, and I can change my mind. And while I do this, if you're watching live, I can read some of the comments coming in. Now, Marion, what's Marion saying? I think when you teach something, you become more mindful of your process and all that goes into a project. Recently discovered myself. Marion, sounds like you've had a teaching experience too. I think that's it. I think I'm so always thinking about what it is I'm going to say out loud and how I'm going to communicate what I do. And in order to be the best version that I can be, I think I'm constantly saying to myself, now, you can't just do that, Ali. You can't just go, oh, well, today I'm using Milford and today I'm doing this, because there's a consequence to that. And I want you to understand the best version of your materials and the best version of your process. This isn't necessarily the way that you will go about it. It's just the way that I have gone about it. So I hope that makes sense. So we have, that was from my anemone, wasn't it? This was a geranium leaf, and this, I believe, was from my pear tree. So let's lighten this line as well. Going over with that putty eraser, just sort of dusting it. It might sort of sound like I'm pressing hard if you can hear me scrubbing over the surface, but I'm really not. I'm nice and light. And where you have, if you get one of these kneadable erasers, I don't like the white ones. I like these ones because where that is now covered in graphite, I can work that back into the rest of the putty eraser and it doesn't get all grubby, cleans my hands, all of that kind of stuff. Now, other comments coming in. What else has Marion said? Marion said, that's why I like watching your demos. I also see what does not work so well. Oh, that's good. I'm glad about that. Marion, what's Ali saying? Sometimes the best teachers are those who have recently learnt something themselves. They remember what caused them difficulties or understanding. Yeah, Ali, I think you're right. I think it's a really important part of communication to sort of say the process that you've been through and why you've done it. Because otherwise you're none the wiser, are you? None the wiser. It's not going to help at all. Right, let's just pick that up. Oh, I wanted to get it in a different light because can you see I've got a nasty scuff mark down there. I wanted to try and get all of those before we move on. Right, and I think we're okay with that. Right, what I'm going to do for the time being is I'm going to set this one aside. I don't think I'm going to get to actually filling this in this week because we have some experimenting to do. Let's go back to that piece of paper that I was testing out earlier because I want to have a look at variations on the colour palette that I might use. This is exactly the same watercolour paper that I'm going to be using on my actual project. So it means that I can test out some things, test out some theories on this. It's not wasted. I can write notes on here. I can make sure that everything that I want is in place before I start doing it on the real thing. Now, I went for a lovely long walk yesterday. I was out in the countryside. I did get rained on quite a lot because it's been chucking it down here on the south coast. And I found this beautiful leaf on the ground. Isn't that gorgeous? Isn't that gorgeous? And this whole thing that we talked about last week about bringing the outside in, I spied it on the ground in front of me and I thought, oh, look at that. That is the perfect kind of combination of colours that I want to start playing around with. Different sort of leaf. I can't remember what tree this came from, but it doesn't matter. I want to experiment with a palette of colours to create an interesting selection on my piece of paper. So that's my inspiration up there. I might stick that in my press actually. And in terms of materials, we could go for watercolour. I've got my trusty watercolour palette here with my usual selection of colours. I think I might have to expand on this a little bit. But I'm concerned that the watercolours won't necessarily, they'll give me the translucency of colour, but they won't necessarily pack me the punch that I want. In some areas of the leaf, I want there to be subtlety. So let's just have a play around with some colours and see what we can get. So for example, I might, where is it? There it is. I might, this is Rose of Ultramarine. This is a Daniel Smith colour. So I might want, I'm just going to do a bit of scribbling. I might want to go for that because it's a beautifully subtle colour. It's going to create some interesting shadows there. But that isn't necessarily going to pack me quite the punch that these are. Okay, I might go for quinacridone gold because those of you that have used quinacridone gold will know that we're sort of in the ballpark here. And that's a pretty good colour, and I know that quinacridone gold and Rose of Ultramarine together are going to make some interesting oranges, that kind of thing. But I'm not entirely sure that that's exactly the way that I want to go. And I thought this was a good opportunity to introduce some inks to you. Now, there are hundreds of inks, hundreds of them out there. And maybe in the future, this is something that we need to cover either as part of Technique Tuesday or one of my classes. Maybe I need to do a whole ink workshop. But I thought what would be interesting today would be to share with you one of my favourite inks. Now, this is one of my favourite inks. This is by a company called Dr. P.H. Martin's, and these are called Bombay inks. Now, Dr. P.H. Martin's do all sorts of liquid colour. I love their concentrated watercolours, but I have to be careful with them because they're not light fast always. The Bombay inks, however, are the kind of the light fast, the waterproof, very intense colours. Now, before I do anything, I'm going to drop my drawing board flat. I'm going to try not to send everything everywhere because I want to set some bottles out. And if my drawing board's still on a slope, they're going to go south. Let's get rid of these clips so that it doesn't make my watercolour paper stand up. Now, I have a whole tray of Dr. P.H. Martin inks. Of course I do, because I'm completely addicted to art materials. But I haven't used these for a number of years. And so I'm wondering if any of them have gone off. I have a feeling that they have. So I'm going to go through a few colours with you and see. Yeah, you see that one's, actually that might have just run out. That one's not making a nice kind of liquid shaking noise. They've got these rubber droppers on as well, which, as you can see on this one, has perished. So I'm going to have to be careful. I probably will end up being stained before the day is out. So let's have a look at some colours that I might want to use. That crimson is looking quite nice, but do I want it that red? I've got a lovely magenta colour here. That's just delicious. That's absolutely fine. You can see the consistency of that still in the bottle. What else have we got? Are we going to, yeah, you see that one doesn't look well at all, does it? It's kind of separated and settled. I don't think there's any bringing that back, so I will tragically need to get myself a new one of those. That's Van Dyke Brown. Let's stick that to one side. What else have we got going on here? This is sepia. Ooh, okay, that one looks okay. It's settled a little bit. Of course, brown pigments being really quite heavy, but we'll have a look at that one. We'll see if that's okay. What else have we got over here? There's a brown. I thought I had a terracotta. Oh, I do have a terracotta. Oh dear. Yeah, that one doesn't look well at all, does it? There's kind of the medium and then the pigment. If I shake it, oh, okay, it might reconstitute. But, well, do I want that? That's kind of close to the reds, isn't it? I'm not just entirely sure about that. What was this? Oh, this one's just called brown. That's not a very inspiring name, is it? But we'll see what the consistency of that is. I think the sepia is all right. And then maybe we'll go for... Actually, I tell you what we'll do. I was going to go for a yellow because the yellows are really vivid. But I'm going to be interested to see what happens when I mix Dr. P.H. Martin's with my watercolour. Because quinacridone gold is a bit of a favourite of mine. So let's just get these out. Let's give them a bit of a drizzle on the paper. Now, what is it about Bombay ink that makes it special? It is light fast. It is waterproof. So it's water soluble when it's wet, waterproof when it's dry. But the other thing about Dr. P.H. Martin's inks, and you'll soon see, looks very uninspiring when you dollop it out. But look at that colour. That's just too exciting for words, isn't it? So you can possibly see now why they are an ink of choice. They're pigmented, they're kind of classed as an Indian ink, and they flow really smoothly. You can use them in pens, they don't clog, all of that sort of stuff. Lots of people saying that they need to get their Bombay inks out because they may have gone off. Yes, go and have a look at them. What is Anne saying? My thumbnail is still brilliantly coloured from flicking acrylic ink from a toothbrush. Yes, you do end up with spatterer's thumb, don't you, from flicking it through a toothbrush. Loving that colour. Let's drop, while that's still wet, you can still see it's got a bit of a gloss on it. Let's drop some of that Quin Gold into the mix and see what we get. Well, that's very delicious, isn't it? Let's just pick up a bit of this colour, add it to one of those leaf shapes and see if we can do some blending out, because that's the danger with ink, that it's not so easy to blend out. You can end up with a tide mark. Can you see that there? But another reason why I'm using Milford, because Milford is very heavily sized, and what that means is that the thing that stops it being like blotting paper, it's got a really heavy coating of it. So it means you've got longer to move your colour around. And that's effectively the difference between a kind of more economy watercolour paper and a very expensive one. So that's nice, isn't it? I like that. So we've got the Quin Gold. I'm liking that. I'm liking the magenta. Those can go over there. What's this one? This was the crimson. Oh, let's get these lids open and see what we've got. Yeah, that lid, that's little dropper is not well. But what I do, and I've done this in the past, because these dropper bottles are notorious for perishing. So you can see, hopefully you can see it's got a bit of a crack there. So what I do, when I've used up a bottle, I wash it out. Particularly if the stopper is absolutely fine, I wash it out and stick it in my box. And then if any part, I sort of scrap it for parts. Then if any part of the bottle, like if I broke one or cracked it or the lid cracked, I just kind of keep those parts to be able to make sure my good bottles are going to be okay. Leslie's saying she's got spatters on her kitchen blind. Yeah, I've got them on my computer, usually on my glasses, all of those kind of things. Right, that was the magenta. This is the crimson. Look at that. That's very rich, isn't it? How delicious. Let's pop some of this on the leaf and see how we go, because obviously we're using this as inspiration. That's pretty good, isn't it? And let's use a little bit of water to create blending out, and we can get that looking rather nice already. Got a nice kind of combination of one colour through the other. This is going to work well, I think, the kind of watercolour and ink combined. Hazel says she's got spattered dogs. I love it. Dear, the wall behind, what's Anne saying? The wall behind and the tabletop in my kitchen are somewhat spattered. Yes, yeah, happens to us all. I wish you could see the bit of my worktop that's in front of me. It's got spatters everywhere, all over my technology. That's not good, is it? So we had the crimson, we had the magenta, we got Quin Gold. Now let's have a look at one of these, what I think are slightly dodgy bottles, because I have a feeling they've gone off. This is the brown. Let's see what happens. Oh, okay, it looks all right. It looks all right. What I might do, maybe not. I'll show you that terracotta by contrast in a minute, and you can see what I mean about the consistency of it. Okay, that's all right. Let's just mix that in with the crimson. See if we get that kind of really lovely russety colour. Yes, look at that. Perfect match. Perfect match. What's Trudy saying? Loving these gorgeous vibrant colours. Lots of fun to be had with the inks. Recycling the bottles is a great tip. It's my pleasure. It's my pleasure. You know me and recycling and reusing and repurposing. As much as I love to treat myself to new things, there's always a place for other things to be included. Look at that as a colour palette now. Isn't that delightful? Right, so I know the sepia is okay, I know the brown's okay. This was, that was the Van Dyke brown. Let's see what this looks like when you take it out. Because I have a feeling, ooh, yeah, that's not good, is it? I don't know if you can see that. It's all a bit lumpy. So it has separated. I have a feeling, yeah, that's not well. It's kind of got a weird sediment going through it. It's not very liquid at all. So what I will do is I will carefully dispose of that liquid that's inside, and that bottle will go into my recycling scheme. It's kind of, can you see the difference? It's all sort of sticky. It's very gloopy, looks more like gouache. Maybe I could use it for a different project, but it's not going to have that kind of fluid consistency that the others have had. So yeah, that one definitely needs retiring, I think. But I do need a brown. Well, I think I need a brown. So let's have a look at this sepia colour. And I think I'm probably going to prefer the sepia colour anyway, because it's a slightly greyer version. Let's stick some up here and see what we got. Actually, that, whilst the liquid is fine, I don't think that dropper bottle is very well. So, oh no, look, big blob. That came out of the dropper bottle. Big blob of pigment. And while I thought the sepia was okay, it's really not. That's very gloopy. Oh dear, I'm going to have to get myself some browns, I think. Yes, so that's interesting. Was that the one that was all right? Yeah, that was that one, wasn't it? So that's okay. So I think the sepia and the Van Dyke brown are going to need to be retired. Just to show you, so all of the colours are transparent, apart from the black and the white, which are opaque. And these colours, just in case you wonder, that's a spattered bottle. That's why it's kind of gone a bit funny down there. These colours are great to have in your arsenal as well. Now, what's Hazel saying? Re-spattering the computer. When painting, I cover it with the transparent cellophane bags my quarter imperial paper arrives in. Can't do that with the dogs. And Sally is saying, are the inks unkind to brushes? So that's a really good question, Sally. I am using my imitation sable brushes to move these around because I know I can be very careful with them, and also because I can wash them out really quickly. If you wanted to be safe, unsurprisingly, I have a second range of brushes just to one side. These are my silver brushes, so these are still the SAAs, but they are acrylic as opposed to imitation, nylon as opposed to imitation sable. If you've got brushes like this, then use them for the inks. It's a great way of kind of repurposing them anyway. I tend to keep my silver brushes for things like this. Then I'm not going to worry about it. Look at that black. Isn't that rich? It's delicious. That's rather lovely. And then what I'm going to do just very quickly to show you, apart from trying not to have a coughing fit, is I'm going to dry this. And then we'll pop some white over the top and we'll have a look at how opaque that white is. I don't think, if I remember correctly, I don't think it's as opaque as gouache, but let's give it a spin around the block and see what we end up with. Right, let's give them a quick dry. I'm only going to just dry that bit just because I want to put the white over the top of it. Look how rich that colour is. Oh, I've got stuff everywhere. Let's take all these bottles off. I can't move my piece of paper. But isn't that sort of lovely and rich and flat? So if I've got any areas, or if I wanted to use that in a dip pen, that's going to work brilliantly, isn't it? But let's just take the white for a spin, shall we? And we'll see how opaque it is. And if it's not as opaque as I would like it to be, then there's no reason at all why you can't add gouache into this project too. Julie is saying, can really notice the texture of the paper. Yes, 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 yes. And Patricia is saying, can you blend inks together to get a third colour? Yes, absolutely. So we've got the red and the brown here, which have made a kind of russety colour. Anything that's water soluble, you can blend together. Whether that's acrylic paint, acrylic ink, watercolour, gouache, whatever it is, it can all be mixed together. So let's just, I'm not entirely convinced that the sediment is mixed together in this. So let's just give it one more roll, one more pass, and then let's see what this looks like. Let's just dot a bit of the white. Well, it looks okay like that, doesn't it? That's pretty opaque, I think. Let's see what happens when I wet it. So let's pick a bit of that. Ooh, it is really white. I'd forgotten how white it is. The question is, does it remain that white or does it dry back? So this might be interesting. Of course, because that black is waterproof, it's layering up over the top. The reason that it's gone a bit grey is because I'm thinning it out over the top of the black. So the black is shining through. Let's see how that dries. Yes, Anne, like Tippex, absolutely, completely and utterly like Tippex. So let's give that a bit of a dry and we'll see how it ends up. Now, it's not as dry as I would like it to be. It's okay. It's not too shabby. The good thing about it, of course, is that it's waterproof. I'm not convinced that it's as white as my gouache would be, but I think it's going to be okay. Maybe I'll use a little bit of gouache in there if I need it. Haven't quite got to the bottom yet of how I'm going to apply these colours anyway. All I wanted to do to start with was to do some experimenting, and what I absolutely need to do before I go any further, because between this week and next week I'm going to have forgotten what it is that I shared with you, so I'm going to annotate everything. So we've got Quin Gold watercolour, that was that. We had Rose of Ultra, which was that. This was, so that was magenta, and that was the Bombay. This was, what was that? That was the sepia, wasn't it? But it was a bit dodgy. So sepia, except I do like that colour, kind of not brown, not grey, somewhere in between. Might have to get myself another one of those. Then down here we had so that was the crimson Bombay. This was the brown Bombay. And what you can end up with, look, is a really useful sheet of all sorts of bits of information so that you have them for the future. So this was the black and the white Bombay. And always a good idea to do this experiment before you start and do anything, I think. This one was Van Dyke Brown, named after the painter, of course. And here we had, what was this? This was, so this was crimson plus a bit of Madge plus Quin gold on the leaf. So I've got this whole load of information now, which I can use to make my decisions about how I'm going to fill in my leaves. And that is where I'm going to leave today. Lots of things to think about, possibly some new materials to buy, which is never a bad thing. What I've got is all bits and pieces of information so that I can make some decisions about how I go about filling my leaves in, and that is where we are going to take it from next week. So we've sorted out our line drawings. We played about with some digital experiments in terms of scanning it, getting it onto the computer, maybe printing it out onto watercolour paper, maybe going back to doing a transfer method. And what I've got now is a lovely colour chart so that I can sit and I'm going to have a sit and a bit of a think and have a look at them to decide what colour selection that I go for. I might suddenly have an epiphany in the week and think of something else that I want to go through too. Ali is saying Daniel Smith walnut ink is a perfect autumn colour. Used it in a spray bottle in the week to mist around some leaf shapes. Yeah. Inks, honestly, we could still be talking about inks into next year. There are so many versions of it. I think I need to do an ink workshop. So I hope that was useful to you. Next week we will come back together and you will see particular application techniques. How am I going to add those colours to my piece of paper? How am I going to get a nice transition between one colour and the next? Is that layer going to be enough? Am I going to need to put other details on there? Am I going to need to work back in with a pen, or am I going to need to work back in with gouache? Who knows? I don't know. I very, very much hope that you can join me next week when we will start thinking about all of those things and see how we get on with it. So thank you for all the comments coming in. If you're watching live, thank you for everything that you do in terms of commenting. I hope that gives you a little bit of inspiration. Until I see you either in person or somewhere in the virtual online network, you take lots of care of yourselves, won't you? And I will see you very soon. Bye, lovely people. Bye.